Okay, let's see how far it goes. So, do we need to change the lights here? Can you guys see it? Okay. So, a lot of what I'm going to talk about is on my course page. Okay, so if you don't know how to access it, please quickly jot this down. And if you lose this information, you can always Google. You can Google for my last name and Com401 to find the course page. You can Google for me, just my name, and you'll get my home page from which you'll find the class page. And what you'll see here is an index. So there's a lot of material here, so searching it is a bit of an issue. So you can either use the index or you can just search to find parts of it. Again, you can just search Piazza for my name and the course, and you'll find it. But the Piazza link is available from the home page. And if you've never used Piazza before, it's not difficult to enroll, so that shouldn't be an issue. Okay. So what you need to do immediately after class is to find the first assignment. Okay. So the first assignment is due in a week. And there's many reasons for that. So find the assignment. You can do that by going to the link Resource by Topics, or you can just look for assignments. You'll find a table with a column called Assignments, and then you can look down into the column, you'll find the first assignment. Okay, so that I've written up already. I might make some changes, but that's something you need to look at as soon as you can. Okay. By the way, since I'll be going a little fast, just interrupt me anytime you can't hear me properly, or if you guys in the back can't hear me properly, I have no sympathy. You just come down. But just stop me if there's any issue. Okay. So I've got this program. I should have disabled it. That tells me to take a break every now and then. So before next class, you should look at certain links in that table. You should download the JDK. You should install Eclipse. If you already have that done, you don't have to worry. You have to look at the slides on Git, how many of you have used Git? It's pretty good. Those of you who haven't, it's an essential tool. And so you'll get some experience with it in this course. And so look at the slides on how to use it. And by doing so, you'll get access to all the code that we're going to talk about. Okay? And you don't have to worry about for now, Object Editor or the debugging in Eclipse immediately. And so the links that I haven't checked, you don't have to worry about right now. I will tell you when to worry about it. Okay, and these are all rows above the scanning row which has the assignment. Okay. Raised your hand. How many? Keep your hands up. How many of you programmed in Python or C++? Put your hand down. So how many of you haven't programmed any of these three languages? Okay. So what now, since there's only three of you, I can ask you. So what have you? MATLAB? MATLAB, yeah. Any non-MATLAB person?
I've just done some coding on my own. I haven't really done any classroom coding.
Okay, so you've just done some coding on your own. Okay, so it's good if you've learned enough by coding on your own, but it's more likely that you'll be able to survive the course if you've done a proper course before. Okay, so it looks like all of you have programmed, except for the 4 MATLAB people, in what's called object-oriented programming. You've coded using an object-oriented programming language. Okay, you may not have used objects optimally. No one does actually. No one knows how to. It's very difficult. But you might have some cursory knowledge of object-oriented programming. So for you 3 MATLAB people or 5 MATLAB people, I'm going to assume that you know nothing about objects. Okay, I'm going to assume that you do know certain topics. Okay, so if you've got no background, if you haven't got a formal background, these terms should all make sense to you. They can make sense at various levels of depth. And the first assignment, one of the reasons why it's due in a week, is to weed out the students who don't really belong here. Okay, so if you can do the first assignment, most likely you have enough background. Okay, so that's the means for you to figure out whether you really can cope with this course or not. Okay, usually there's a large fraction of students who come to join this class. That used to be the case when the prerequisite was full, and people would just say, let me take a chance with this course rather than the prerequisite. I think the prerequisite right now is not full. So maybe we'll have the problem less this time. So like I said, I'll teach you all aspects of object-oriented programming. For those of you who've done it before, don't go to sleep. Or at least if you go to sleep, do wake up somewhere in the middle of the semester. Okay, because my experience is that those who are more nervous and feel they don't know the material go much further, and the ones who think they know lose some subtle aspects. Okay, so do pay attention. Okay. What we have here is 110 for that course. And how many of you have done 110 here? A large number. Okay, with Chris? Okay. So Chris actually took 401 from me a long time ago. So it's all in the family here. You know something about 110. You know that 401 follows 110. And you know there's a bunch of courses that follow 401, the most relevant of which is 410. Any idea what this course is going to be about in comparison to the other two courses? One person says no idea, being honest. Okay, so it's a required course, so you're here. Anybody want to take a break? Yeah? Programming well. So you've learned how to program, and you're going to try, we'll try to teach you how to program well. And it takes a lifetime, actually. But we'll try to do at least a one semester job. Okay? So how's that different from 410? Programming better? Or a little less well than 410? So the things that you take for granted are many things. Like even your computer you take for granted, right? So that will be taught in one course. That will be the architecture course. But data structures, okay? That's exactly what the course is called, okay? So 110 is introductory programming. It assumes you know nothing, okay? 401 assumes that you know something. And like I said, the first assignment will test how much, whether you know enough or not. Usually a one semester college course is enough background. And 410 is data structures, okay? So if you're writing a hello world program, how badly can you program? I mean, what is programming well versus not programming well? It's a one-line program, right? So what am I trying to imply here? Programming well is relevant when?
It's complex.
It's complex and large. So there's complexity and there's largeness, okay? Complexity you will deal with for the rest of your undergrad courses. Largeness is what we'll emphasize here, okay? So, so here I've got a little graph, and it's the component complexity, so programs are broken into components, just as an essay might be broken up into paragraphs and sections. Programs are broken up into components, and those of you who are not MATLAB, you all know classes and methods are the components that we talk about a lot, and those of you in MATLAB, you at least know about procedures and functions, right? So those are components. So data structure will take one little component that implements one data structure, and it's complex, and they'll analyze it to great depth, okay? And what you did in 110 or the equivalent was small components, small number of components which were very simple, okay? And what's going to happen in 401 is that you're going to have a large number of classes, okay? And again, I'm quoting classes only for 3 or 4 students, each of which will have many methods. And you have as many as like 40 classes and interfaces in your program, okay? That's a large number, okay? You'll see it's dealing with 40 units that all have to work with each other is quite hard, okay? So that's what differentiates this course from other courses. Okay, questions? And this course, I take very seriously, and the department takes very seriously, because it's the only required course that deals with large programs. Okay? So if you were not to do this course, then internships will be, or let's put it the other way around. If you do this course, internships become much easier. Okay? And you will do some optional courses like the compiler course and the operating system course, but the compiler course is the only one that really will deal with this large complexity in the size dimension. Okay, the project broken up into assignments. Okay, and the assignments will build on each other. Okay, so you have to make sure that the foundational assignments work well. Otherwise, the future assignments will have problems. Okay, and each assignment will have its own due date and points. Okay. And there'll be plenty of chance to do more than what I asked. Okay. So there'll be some required components, and there'll be lots of extra credit. And the reason is that you have varying interests, and you have varying abilities. Some of you have, for some of you it will be, programming is something, it's a hobby also, okay? And for some of you, programming is one course you're taking, and there are 4 other courses to take also, and so you want to make sure that you do a global optimization in terms of grades, okay? So, extra credit is also insurance against getting behind in other parts. And because I'm teaching you how to program well, our goal is not just functional correctness. Like, hey, if it prints hello world, we're happy. Okay? It should print hello world in an elegant way now. Hello world, there's no elegance required, but if something more complex has got to be within quotes elegant, and we'll define elegant quite precisely. Okay? So there'll be constraints. When each assignment will have constraints, and please look at them carefully. For those of you who have not done Java, this is not about Java. Okay? Every instructor will tell you that when they teach a language, they're programming, that this is not about the language. And they are lying a little bit and being truthful to a large extent. Okay? So I'm also lying a little bit here. But why I'm being truthful is that I will actually forbid the use of anything in Java that I don't teach you. Okay? A lot of times I'm going to tell you how to implement something that Java already implements. Okay? It won't be complex data structure, it'll be simple data structure, but it'll teach you how to understand what you have already to some degree. And the first assignment is about scanning. And scanning is a very important concept, and there are libraries to do it. Okay? They're forbidden. Okay? So I've had students who said, I just wanted to show off my Java knowledge. Show off your ability to create your own logic. Okay? So be very careful there. That, and again, for those of you who've not done Java, this is good news, because you're not at a handicap compared to people who know the API, the application programming interface. Okay? Questions so far? Okay. Points. Now, if you've programmed, you know that you shoot for a certain date, and you tend to not make it. Okay? In fact, Microsoft, with its thousands of people, will shoot for a certain date and not make it. Okay? So it's easy to miss the deadline. So what I would encourage you to do is shoot for 2 days before the deadline. If you make it, you get 5 extra points. Okay? If you don't make it, insurance, you got till Friday. Okay, so the assignments are due on Friday. All due dates are 11:55 p.m. of that day. Okay? So assignments are due on Friday, 11:55 p.m. Shoot for Wednesday. If you make it, you get 5 extra points. If you don't make it, you've got till Friday. Okay? And this is during the week, so there will be TA help. So if you get stuck on Wednesday, there will be help on Thursday and Friday. Late penalty, now you don't make it by Friday, you've got the weekend, you submit it on Monday night, 5% off. Okay? You can't make it on Monday, you submit it next Friday, 10% off. You don't make it that Friday, you can submit any date after that, you lose 20%, we've got an automatic grader, and you will just, there's two reasons to have deadlines. One is to keep you honest. Okay? One is to make sure that you just don't focus on the chemistry homework all the time and spend some time on computer science too. Okay? The other is to make sure that the workload of the TAs is balanced. Okay? So if we let you submit arbitrarily late, then they have to always be ready to grade you, which means they can't budget. Okay, so the rationale behind that automatic grading is, so what we'll do is, if you submit it within the first week, then we'll run the automatic grader. When it goes wrong, the TAs will correct it, and you can complain about it, and there'll also be a manual grading component. Okay, so you'll get points for that, and you'll get any points that the automatic grader took off you unfairly, you'll get them back. After that, you're at the mercy of the automatic grader. Okay, hopefully by that time, the automatic grader has been worked out. So what do you guys think? This penalty is lenient or strict or just right? Strict, just right? Anybody think it's lenient? It is lenient, right? It's very lenient. It's much more lenient than I've ever had. So why am I being so nice? And am I being nice? Because if I have, by being nice, I might in fact hurt you. It's good to have strict parents, right? So that you got wrong, which takes 20 hours on your own. So I'd rather you finish things completely than submit something half-baked. Plus, these assignments build on each other. If you got mistakes in the first assignment, you won't be able to do the remaining assignments. And they are pretty individualized. Even though we have an automatic grader, you can't just take somebody else's assignment or my assignment and plug it on top of your own. Okay, it's just building it. There are constraints, but there's a lot of freedom also. So they just won't go and plug it. Okay, and so that's the reason. So 10%, is sizable enough, I think, that you will be honest, and after that, after the first week, you won't get more than 50, 60%. So that's the disincentive. But there are times I've had students who just get behind completely, and then they use Thanksgiving break and October break to do 10 assignments, okay? And they somehow understood the concepts and they do it. And I don't want to penalize them. They did do the work, they did learn it. So if you are in that rare group, I do want to give you a chance. Okay? So that's the penalty. Any issues? Any questions? Okay. So if you're more than 1 week late for more than one assignment, you won't get a good grade, and you'll probably fall behind. Probably. So try not to fall behind. Okay? So try to shoot to get everything done in one. There'll be a assignment within the 1 week grace period. There will be an assignment every week. That's part of the reason why I'm also having a lenient. If you have one week with lots of exams, I should allow you to go and skip by. If I have an assignment every 2 weeks, you have more of a buffer. But I found that doesn't work well because students just start, 2 days before the deadline. So that doesn't work very well. Okay. Assignments will be due every week, but except for the midterm week, when we won't have an assignment that week. So at least from the point of view of my course, during midterm week, you won't be doing an assignment. Okay. Let the second reason not be the reason you're behind. We are here to help. I'm going to introduce the TAs next lecture because one of the TAs is not here. But Simone here is one of your TAs. And the other TA is Andrew, and they'll both be in class from Thursday onwards. They have a TA meeting, which I think you have to go to. So, but we are here to help. So, and what kind of help are we going to give you? We're not going to give you a piece of code and say, here's the loop you can't write. Okay? But we'll help you with the design. And if you have a loop and you're having trouble getting it working, we'll help you debug it. Okay? And if I'm going to give you the design one-on-one, with large classes, it may be more efficient to just give you the design in the assignment. But if I give you the design in the assignment, then you may not think. So, these are the kind of issues as an instructor you have to face. Okay? So my solution is that I have an implementation hint section in my assignment with very small print. Okay? And you guys have good eyes, so I should make it even smaller, I think. But then you can always scale it up with the PDF. But read that only when you're stuck, because try to do it on your own, and that's how you learn. And ultimately, we'll see the weightage given to exams. But is there a clock here? Huh. How useful. So if I run over, please let me know. Yeah, read the hints only if you need them. Okay, and if we are going to help you with design and debugging, you should be able to help each other with design and debugging. And if you help me with design and debugging, who's benefiting, me or you? I'm benefiting. You're helping me. Are you benefiting also? So there are two viewpoints: those who can't teach, right? And as a faculty member, you like to believe it's the opposite, that you really learn well when you teach. Okay? So if you teach somebody else, trust me, you will learn better. Okay? So I want to encourage that. Don't share code. Okay? And it's easy to figure out when some code came from somewhere, because a code came from somebody else. Okay? But you can talk in English at the non-code level as much as you want to. In fact, I encourage you to do that. The assignments are solo. Okay? They're individual assignments. But you can. You should not borrow code from somebody who's done the course previously or from your classmates. Okay? I've been here since '93, and I've had only one honor code violation so far. So, but I do have to mention this. And this weekend I was listening to NPR's TED Talks, and they had something on why we lie, and it was about why people like to cheat, maybe some small amount, and the incentives to do so. So overcome those incentives. And at some point, if we have an automatic grader, we can also have an automatic plagiarism detector. Okay, like I said, I've never felt the need for it, but that is something that is an option. Okay, so there will be temptation to do so, like this talk mentions, especially when you have deadlines. But with the flexible submission that you can submit any time and get some credit at least, that there should be less. Okay, so we will try to make sure that every day of the week there's some office hours. Okay, and so you can of course go to office hours. We will have in-class discussion also, and we will have piazza for discussion outside the class. Okay? And if you have a question that could be even remotely, that's not private, okay, remotely of interest to somebody else. So if you have a technical question, please don't send help to us. Post it on Piazza, because if you have that question, there's at least 10 other people, I believe, who also have the same question. And you're doing them all a service by articulating the question. Okay? So use email only for private matter, like grades and other things. Okay, other private queries. And don't send mail to individual instructors. I didn't even put my email address there, because then the email gets just jumbled with everything else. Yeah, I use Gmail. I've never deleted an email of mine ever. So, mail them across. At least with this, I can search for help for them. Okay? Wouldn't it be nice if you also had some software to help? And in your 110, did you guys use some software that could help you? What was it? Sorry, say a little louder.
I don't know what it's called.
But what did it do? You had a grader that would tell you whether you're on the right track, whether you're executing along the lines expected. Okay. Anybody else had any other kind of? So it ran your program. Any other form of help you ever had that doesn't involve running your program? If you've used Eclipse, you get errors and warnings. That's of some help too, right? The compiler looks at your code and tries to go and find some general issues. You know, if your code is not consistent, it'll give you error. If your code, you know, is not following some style rule that it believes is good, it'll give you a warning. Okay? So we're going to have a variety of such. There's a tool called CheckStyle on which I built some code, and this tool was not meant to be used for this purpose, so it can be issues. But what this code does is it analyzes your source code, what you've written, and tells you without running your code whether you're on the right track or not, and what you're missing. Okay? So what do? You go from your programming environment. By the way, how many of you have not used Eclipse? Very small number. But if you haven't used Eclipse, what have you guys used? Some other programming environment? Okay. Anybody just used the regular notepad and command line? You're not real programmers. Good. I mean, good and bad. I used to teach them how to do that, but it just takes too much time. Okay, so from your programming, and you know, if you know IntelliJ, it's even more. You know, you can adapt to Eclipse. But please, to get access to everything I've done, you'll need Eclipse. Okay? So in Eclipse, you can extend Eclipse. Okay? So CheckStyle is an extension of Eclipse, which I've extended further. And you can go to a project and say CheckStyle, and you can say check code with CheckStyle. Okay? And normally it will go and give you some canonical things like you don't have magic numbers, you have magic numbers, you shouldn't have magic numbers. But in fact, I do expect you to have. Okay? So if you don't have that method, it'll give you an error. Okay? So it's looking at your code, which is much more than, which gives you more information than running the code. Okay? And you can get the message, you know, you can get the errors by just, you know, by hovering over or clicking on the, this is supposed to be yellow, I don't know if you see it or not. Also get the errors in the problems pane in Eclipse. IntelliJ, I'm sure, has the same feature. There are things called infos and warnings and errors. So you'll see some of these panes populated by messages that are used. Okay? So this is very assignment specific. Right? This is not generic stuff that, hey, you shouldn't have magic magic numbers. This is, in this assignment, this is what I expect you to have. And how does my tool know, you know, what to? So with each assignment, I'm going to have a checks file. Okay. Has an obscure description of the assignment. You'll have the assignment in English also, but this will be an obscure description that at least my tool can read. And some of you will be able to figure it out also. So those of you who can, just go look into it. And if you want to know the answer to some ambiguity in English, you know, this will provide. Okay, so no running of the code, just analyzing your code, what you've written, like a compiler does. Do you think I could check for all errors and check for correctness completely by doing so? Why not? I can write a program that goes and analyzes your program, looks at the source code, without running it, and say, hey, this is what it will do. I mean, why do you think that's not possible? You don't think it's possible because you don't think I'm a good enough programmer, or some other reason? You think I'm not a good enough programmer? Sure. Other reason? Little louder.
Right, it's just checking that you have those values and methods, not checking how they're being utilized. So
Okay.
you could be utilizing it wrong within your.
Okay, so you're saying all it's doing is checking for what you've seen. It's just checking for the presence of methods, which is exactly true. And that's because I'm a bad programmer, or because I can't do it. Can't I, supposing you give me hello world program, can't I go and look at the print statement there and see whether you've got a print line hello world? If I can do that, do I have to run it? I know whether you've got a print line hello world or not. So maybe if I just was smarter, I had more time, I could do it all without running it. Yeah.
No, because there are several reasons. One is that the program can be syntactically correct and still not, like, you know, give the right result. For example, with the print hello world, if they have print hello world, before that they have like a while true loop, then like it's syntactically correct, but it will never execute. And another thing is that like user input sometimes is a factor, right? And that will be impossible to check if the user like did what they're supposed to do.
Okay, you said two things. One is that, just because there's a print line hello world doesn't mean that the statement will actually be executed. You could have a while true before that. That will make sure that you never even reach the statement, right? So my answer to that is I will go and check whether there's a while true or not, and I'll analyze whether it reaches or not. And the other thing you said was that your program is a function of, what you get, output is a function of input, right? But I could analyze that too. Supposing my program is supposed to add two numbers. I can go and look whether you've got a correct add routine, and then if you input the two numbers, it will always, if I'm correct, then addition will be correct, yeah.
Right, but like, you see, those things you also have to check because it becomes like infinitely recursive, right? You have to check every function you use for a precondition, and theoretically, you can have like two functions that call each other, and you would just end up being a loop.
Okay, so you don't like loops, you're scared of loops. Either through while true or through recursive calls. And you should be scared of loops. Yeah. Sorry, so I can't quite hear you. So I don't have the time to? Oh, so you're saying I don't have enough time to go and actually run the test cases, and you say sandbox version because you're afraid that there may be some security bugs? Oh, so you're saying it's theoretically impossible to set up a service that will continuously test your code. Actually, I'm saying I won't even test your code. I'll just analyze your code. And anybody heard of the halting problem?
But you could just set a timeout and wait for the timeout.
Okay, so what's the halting problem?
Oh, yes, I'm scared of loops, right? The halting problem is like, it's like, is it possible to write a program that detects infinite loop at compile time without having to run?
So the halting problem says, no matter how smart I am, you cannot write a program that goes and checks if another program halts. In other words, you cannot find infinite loops in other programs. Theoretically impossible. Okay, that's why I like that answer of his where he said, he didn't like the while true, he didn't like the recursive calls. And the answer to the halting problem is to have tests with timeouts. Okay, which is what your friend was next to you was trying to hint at. Okay, so we can't get away with running test programs. That's my point. And my second point is that there's lots of interesting stuff beyond this course. And if you were to take one of the many courses that are enabled by this course, you will learn the proof of the halting problem. Why it's impossible to write a program, and it's a very elegant proof. Okay, and so in computer sciences, you learn how to do things, and you also learn how to not try to do certain things, like try to go and write a program that checks if another program halts. Okay, so we can't quite do that. What will happen here is that we'll give you that option too, but if all works according to plan, okay, this is stuff, all stuff that I've written this summer, you will be able to execute code just in your Eclipse environment that will go and run your code against certain tests, and green means you passed, and various shades of red mean that you failed to various degrees. Okay, and there'll be a message that will tell you somewhat intelligently what the failure is. Okay, failure problem. And I heard from Chris that a lot of students just used it, without were just banging away at the grader without thinking. So please don't do that. Think before you test, so that you don't waste time. Okay. And there'll hopefully also be a server option. And the server option will require you to, just from Eclipse, you don't have to go to the web. And from Eclipse, you can just go and log in with your name and password and say which assignment you want graded. And you will, the style checks, so it's just a server that's running both kinds of programs. And the reason to support this is that students have trouble installing software on their computer, so this is the solution in the cloud. Okay, but you still have to install a plugin to go and access that. So there's also a way to go through the web completely. So that's another, okay? Yet another tool, okay, is a tool called Object Editor, which combines elements of execution and analysis, code analysis. It doesn't do the code analysis at compile time, it does it at runtime, but at runtime you can analyze some of the code. And if you've coded using certain practices that are established, if you code using practices that make your code understandable to others, then your code will be understandable to Object Editor also. And it will use that understanding to visualize your objects. Okay? So you gain in two ways using Object Editor. First, you can visualize your data structures, okay, what you've done. Secondly, you know whether you followed the rules or not. Okay, and so if you haven't followed the rules, you don't get what you expect, don't blame the messenger. Okay, Object Editor is not to blame, it's you who haven't followed the rules. Okay, and the rules are not something that I'm inventing, they're really classic rules of coding. So for instance, you see a form item here with axis length, and that is being displayed because you've got a method called getAxisLength and setAxisLength. And if you were to call this obtain axis length or foo and bar, you won't get that. You won't get that display. Okay, so when we see your result, we know that you followed the rules, and so that helps us, that helps you, and you can also visualize, right? You can go and visualize what the value of this particular what's called property is, and you can also create graphical interfaces this way. The visualization has also been done by you. But I can't have you do this from day one. So you will just replace Object Editor with your own tool, and your code will be structured in such a way that replacement is possible. Okay, so we will make sure that it is modularly done, and if it is, then you'll just create both interfaces together, replace one with the other. So that's yet another fourth piece of software that you'll use. So there are 4 pieces of software. Only one of them is required. Only one of them I guarantee will work. If it doesn't work, I'll just spend all night making sure that it works. The other 3 pieces of software are optional pieces of optional code. The checker, the code checker is something I wrote in a rudimentary fashion last year, and I used it a year ago. I've changed it a lot. Hopefully it hasn't broken. And the other 2 pieces of code are brand new. Okay? So they are not required to finish your assignment. They just help. They hopefully help. If it's new and it hasn't been tested in class, it could even be a hindrance. I don't think so, but it could potentially be a hindrance. So they've all come from a research group. They are research components, and that means so when you use it, you're agreeing to be essentially a research subject. Okay, and like I said, I believe they work well, but there's always a chance they don't, and I may or may not have cycles to fix them. So when you use the tool, you'll be asked to look at the consent form and sign the consent form, and that will give us also the right to examine any usage of it and see how we can improve the tool later, and report in publications about the tool usage. Okay, so that's, I will encourage you to use them, but you're not required to. Okay, so the consent form is on the web page too, and there is dangerous stuff. If you take the wrong pill, you could suffer side effects. Here, there's really no danger. Okay, but we still have to go through the process to make sure that everything is kosher. Okay, so I told you that this is the only course that deals with a large number of components, and that means it has to deal with mess. Okay, dealing with small, complex things like the halting problem, where everything can be explained in one lecture, you don't have to reference something 3 lectures ago, is a little easier than dealing with how to put together 10 components, some of which you might have learned 3 weeks ago, and it gets tricky. Okay, and it's tricky enough that there's really no textbook on this stuff. Okay, so how? Okay, you see, I know something about how to use a PowerPoint. Give to you PDFs of the slides I present in class, and I'm sure In many classes, you've seen that. Okay. You'll have access to PDFs. Would you want to go beyond PDFs? Anybody? A YouTube video created from the PowerPoint recording. Okay, so you can also not only play the PowerPoint recording, which no one does now. Since I've started making YouTube videos, people just go to the YouTube video and then you can just, you can skip over parts that are uninteresting to you and focus on the parts that are of interest to you. Okay. But one problem with the YouTube thing is that you can't go slide by slide. It doesn't have the concept of slide. It just has a linear recording. So you can't say go to slide 10. Okay? So that is where it's called Office Mix. You see these markers here? These are all slide markers. So you know this is the first slide, second slide, and so forth. So you can just skip to the slide marker. You have a table of PowerPoint and YouTube. Okay? And my friends at Microsoft say, why do you even give them the option of going to YouTube? Just Office Mix has everything. But for some reason, students just went to YouTube still last time. So I don't recommend that because you have much more flexibility here, but I'll give you that option too. And let me know if there are some problems. One person thought that you couldn't fast forward, you can't play at 2x speed, but I believe that feature does exist. I tried it out. Okay, so that all seems good. And what happens when I record is that what I'm saying hopefully got recorded. What you guys said there didn't quite reach you. Okay, so what I'm giving you is a live lecture. I'm not giving you a 15-minute studio lecture without the questions. Okay, so there will be long pauses. You'll have to guess what the answer was. I'll try to repeat the answer, but it's not perfect. And I've got Word documents. Okay, now Word is, you've got to read something, you don't listen to things, so there's trade-offs. But there are Word documents that you can browse quickly, especially before exams. You don't have time to listen to all the recordings before exams. Okay? So there's a Word document which you can have PDF, and I also put it in Google Docs, so you can, if you want to, comment together on and say, I don't understand this part, and somebody else can say, this is how, at least in theory, that will happen. In practice, it never happened last time, but it's there. I'm optimistic that this may still be useful. Okay, so people tend to just go to the PDFs of slides because that's the fastest. But you've got all these other options also. Okay, and this course is about code, and that whole code is available to you in two forms. One, it will be available to you on the web. You can just click through the table of contents of all the code that we talk about and see the code. And you can also So, one of the wonderful things about this country is choices. And they give you a headache. The key to unhappiness is to have choices, because you always feel that you made the wrong choice. At least that's some TED talk said that. So, but you have choices. Okay? You can choose how to be unhappy here. Now, given all these mechanisms, oh, and by the way, for each unit, I'll have all the links. Okay, so if the unit is scanning, I'll tell you, here's the PowerPoint, here's the PDF, here's the YouTube, here's the mix, here's the docx, here's the drive version, and even some animations here, and here's the link to the code, hyperlinked code. Okay, so you can't tell you I haven't given you enough information. Okay, so what do we do in class? You have the recordings from before. Okay, I can give you the recording from before. When I have done live lectures, after giving recordings, I listen to the recordings during breakfast time, and I find myself saying the same things that I heard in the morning. So from my point of view, I'm just repeating things. So it's not very, it's kind of boring. It's easy, but it's kind of boring. Let's look at it from your point of view. Now, you have to believe, there's no proof here, that without all these resources, a lecture would be of much more value than without the resources. Right? In fact, some students didn't come to class because I had these lectures, and the better students there did as well as the students in my class. Okay? So the ones who could manage their time. And this is the experience of a lot of people. You guys have heard of Udacity? It's a MOOC. So in the first MOOC, a Stanford professor gave the same lecture to 20 students paying lots of money in his class, and to 10,000 people around the world. And for the latter, he gave videos. For the former, he gave live lectures. And soon the 20 people in his class were not coming to class and listening to his lectures offline because they could look at it for various reasons. So, any ideas what we should do in class if not lectures? Write code? Right, do your homework? I would love that, yeah. Sorry? Question sessions? Okay, anything that's not clear? Who? You ask me questions or I ask you questions? Big difference. In one case, I'm testing you. Okay? Okay, anything else? So, let's just go through. Live lecture, why would you go listen to the recordings? That's just a fallback, right? I mean, you can go to a live concert or you can listen to the CD, right? So, the problem is this, that, you've got a variety of students here. And you all understand things at your own pace and in different ways. And what I've found, and we're talking about code, that's intense stuff, If the program can't figure out whether some loopholes or not, you can, but with difficulty. And some have more difficulty than others. So what I found is that I start teaching to about 20 students out of 100. They are the ones participating, they're the ones keeping me at their pace, and the other students are getting lost. Okay? And that's part of the reason why I decided to spend all this energy into writing the software and creating this material. So that's a problem I'm trying to solve. And you can follow your own pace with the recorded material. So what do we do in class? We can do homework, and I'd love for you to do the homework. But students, I tried that last semester, and students said that, we're tired during class time, relatively speaking. And this requires deep thinking. And it's not clear to them. It's not clear that they can actually think deeply enough. Okay, so, and then, if you're coming to class and each working alone, why are we in a common area? So that's sort of the drawback. And you can only have limited discussion with the classmates. The person sitting next to you might not have even started the project. You have started. So it's tricky. This is, if the option I'm going to talk about, if it doesn't work well, that's what we do. Okay? And we'll be here to answer questions. And the thing is that if we answer a question about your homework in 5 minutes, that may save you, stitch in time. It may save you lots of time. Quizzes, okay, where I test the material, test that you understood the support material. And I did that last time. So if I do that for an hour, you're going to have limited questions from me. I've given this lecture so many times, I've probably answered all the questions that need answered. Okay, and with all the resources I have, the answer exists. Okay, and you've got Piazza too to answer the question. So I would give them deep questions because I've got an hour, and that put pressure on them. And I said, it doesn't matter. It's such a small percentage of your grade, and what matters is the average. But they just didn't like that too much. Okay, and a lot of them didn't have time. When you're here, you're free 2 o'clock on Tuesday, Thursday. So you're here. You may not have allocated time in the previous 2 days to look at the access to the resource. And so then the quiz becomes an issue. What did you like about it?
The teacher explained what he was doing while he was doing it, and for students who weren't sure where to go, where to start, really gives a starting point.
It gives a starting point. You see things in slow motion, and if you, it's like proving a theorem in class, right? Except it's not a theorem, it's a program. So if I use this approach, you're going to be, I can't type. I can't write also, actually. I can't write cleanly handwriting, and I'm a two-finger typist. Okay, so it'll take forever. But the idea of doing this stuff is a good one, I think. And if I'm typing and you're watching me, that's like my giving you a tour of Chapel Hill and saying, this is how you get to the Dean Dome, and I'm driving and you're sitting as a passenger. It's not the same thing as my sitting as a passenger and telling you to go turn left, turn right, because you've done it yourself. And that is the mode I want to go. Because if I'm going to code while you watch, I have a script in my head that I'm following. I'm acting out a script. Why don't I just give you the script? And you go, and I say, here's the interesting point, here's the library, here's the Dean Dome, I'm giving you a tour, and I'm trying to tell you what's interesting about each point. So that is what we are going to do as a first option. If for some reason it doesn't work out, we'll do homeworks. Okay. How many of you, by the way, don't like the idea of doing homeworks in class? 5 of you are saying yes, and probably many more mean it then. And what's your reason? I'm just curious. Since you already said something, somebody in the middle? Yeah. Well, I'll let you answer. What's your reason? Yeah. So you're saying, what benefit do I get by doing it in class? What if you have a question about you're stuck somewhere? Sorry? Not every Stack Overflow is pretty tricky, huh? They don't like silly questions. And by definition, you should be asking silly questions, otherwise you shouldn't be in this class. By Stack Overflow standards, right? But yeah. Anybody else have a reason for not doing homework? You had 5 hands. Okay, maybe I've already given the reasons there. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. The code that I was going to present in PowerPoint slides, that I do present, is going to be commented with the tour. Okay, and you're going to say, okay, what you see here is the main method. Okay, and I say, look, this is the example of a main method, which you Java guys, this is straightforward. And I say, okay, this is here's some rules. So I tell you some facts. Okay, and then I say, hey, think a little bit now. So what if I go and change this header with this header? What do you think will happen? Now make the change. See what happens. Okay? So you are essentially learning by experimentation. Okay? And you're learning by doing. And this course is all about doing. Ultimately, you've succeeded if you finish the project. Okay? And the more practice I give you with doing things, the more likely it is that you will succeed. And the students who don't do as well are the students who couldn't finish the project. That's what happens. That is the reason why some people do worse than others. And, it's very easy to go and teach to the people who go look at Stack Overflow and are answering questions. But, if I want to really do my job well, I should really try to get as many people do something complex as possible. Okay? So that's what we'll do. You'll come in, you please form as big a group as possible. Don't sit too apart. Okay? Sit next to each other. Try to sit with somebody else each time if possible. And follow the script. And I did some of this last time, and I was amazed how well the students did in the midterm after I'd done these exercises. Okay? Much more so than when I gave lectures. This is why I have some confidence in this approach, but I've taken it, to a bigger level this time, and do practice with as large a group as possible for, let's say, 50 minutes. Get as much work as possible done in the 50 minutes. There's no pressure to finish everything. You have time before the class, you have time after the class to finish it. Then answer some questions of Sakai, some obvious questions. So not these deep questions that will make your head hurt, okay? But questions that even after you've taken a chemistry class, you can answer in class. Okay? And some of them will be, what happened when you commented out this method and put this method in here? Just facts. And you say, this is what happened. Okay? So just to keep you honest. And then, those will be multiple choice questions. So, there's only so much thought that can go into multiple choice questions. Then I will go and ask you guys questions based on that material and say, why do you think it behaved this way? And why do you think it behaved that way? So I'm repeating some of the questions, but now I expect answers with reasons, not just selection from multiple choice. Okay? That will be class discussion. And you'll be graded on the class discussion, okay? Plus on your answers to the quizzes, etc. And those quizzes will not be due at the end of that class, so no pressure. But then they'll be due perhaps even at the end of the semester. I don't know. At this point, I'll just see. I don't like to go. There are all kinds of reasons why people can't attend classes. So I don't want to keep opening and closing quizzes for individual people, so I might just keep them open. But you should really finish the Praxis before you start the homework. Yeah, otherwise you're not going to be able to do the homework. And if you come to us with a question about the homework, you're implicitly saying that I have finished the Praxis, and we can easily check that. And so that'll be a deterrent to being lazy. Okay? So you guys get the idea? Any comments on this? Okay, we'll see how it works out. But like I said, the second most constructive use of the time I can think of is the homework. Okay? And that's on your own at home. And you can do the Praxis, you don't even need to come to class. Okay? But that's few. A lot of you need to come to class because, so I've read papers on this. And they've said that whoever requires attendance, make sure that more students succeed. Okay? So I will require you to come to class. Okay? And even though the Praxis will be due later, it'll be sort of done on an honor code basis. I'll just talk about that. So, and come to class for the whole period. Don't come late. Now that you've discovered this class, okay, it took some discovery on my part and some of the other students I walked in here with. You shouldn't be coming late. or leaving class early, unless you have an excuse. So if you have an excuse, you can send us mail, but the mailbox gets cluttered even when you use the alias. So it'll be good to go use some kind of web database. And I've tried this. I don't know if it'll work or not. Sakai quiz is not meant for this, but I just started a quiz called attendance. And in here, this is open-ended. You can submit answers multiple times. So if there is a reason you can't attend, or you have to leave early or come late, please write that down, okay, before class. And that will be your excuse. And otherwise, if you haven't written that down, I assume that you came to class. And if I take a random attendance and you're not there, then that's an honor code violation. So minor honor code violation, but it is an honor code violation, and I'll talk about that. Okay, so I know one student already sent me a message in the summer saying, hey, I won't be here for these classes. So please go and fill this up. I want to test this out whether it works so that I can see because like I said, this is not really a quiz. I'm trying to use it for that reason. So do fill this up and test whether I can see what's happening. I didn't even ask you for the name, and if I ask you the name, I'll probably forget it. But I will ask you from now. But please, after you had a meaningful discussion, and I would say, hey, that was meaningful, in case there's ambiguity, please go to Sakai and say, hey, on this date, I went and answered this question. That will also recap the material for you, and that will help me allocate points for class discussion later. Okay? So again, this is not really a quiz, but this is information you're volunteering that I can see in Sakai. So don't feel shy, don't feel modest that, oh, that was nothing. Because each student, I'm going to make sure that I ask students who have not answered questions before so that everybody gets a chance. With 100 students, I think we'll hit each student more than once, if not multiple times. So, and that's, again, you come into class, if you talk to each other, you talk to me, that's much more meaningful than just a lecture in which you're not participating as much or just doing homework, in which you're not discussing. Okay? So here's the grade distribution. The midterm will be hour and 15 minutes. The final will be, we'll have 3 hours, but I'll write a 2-hour exam. Okay? And you guys will get tired within 2 hours and say, enough. So you won't stay for 3. Well, who knows? Many students like to stay all 3 hours, and I encourage you to do as well as you can. So because the final is got a higher time, is for a longer time period, it's got a higher weightage. So that's 50% for exams. Those are hard points. Those are difficult points to get. Okay? The exams are always tricky, especially when it involves programming, things that we've precisely done. The other 50%, the assignments are also hard. Okay? But if you work, if you spend time, you will get them. You will get them done. And without extra credit, they're 35%. With extra credit, they go up much more. So the top student in my class typically gets about 115% out of 100%, just because they've done so much extra credit. So there's a lot of so assignments can be given from 35 to 50% weight depending on how much you do. In-class work will involve recitations and lecture quizzes. Okay, they'll be again straightforward quizzes. So these are points you don't want to lose. Okay? You want to get these points. And discussion. Okay, again, if the discussion, you can answer those questions based either on the praxis you did, or you can actually look at the material beforehand, and the questions I'll ask you will be directly answered in the material that is available. Yeah.
So what are
Recitations, you signed up for those. Every Friday, you have, sorry? What do you do in recitation? What you do in recitation is get a template. So we will do an exercise in class, okay, and cover some topics in class. Those topics are revised by the TAs in recitation. And you will do another problem that's like the problem we did in class. And then your assignment will be yet another problem on that same topic. So you get to see the same concept in 3 ways. Once in lecture through the praxis, or through the lectures in the material. Second, through recitations. And thirdly, by doing the project itself. Okay, so these things should sync. And typically what students do is they get code, the assignment, the code that they write in recitation is from scratch. The code you deal with in class is my code that you modify and understand. Okay? So students typically take that code in the recitations and use that as a template for their assignment. Okay? And there'll also be a fudge factor. You know, so class discussion, there are certain questions I expect you to answer, which will be not too hard, and you answer them, you get your class discussion points. But you guys might just totally impress me, some of you, by the depth of your answer. Okay? If you really impress me, and you're on the borderline of a grade, okay, you're borderline between A minus and A, or B plus and B, then I will use up to 5% points, depending on how much you impress me. I'll use a fudge factor to bump you. But I've done that, you know, to 1 or 2 students each semester. Okay. You would expect the students who are answering all these questions in class don't need that such help. But it's amazing that some students can think so well in class, but they don't do assignments well, or make some silly mistakes in the exam. So this is insurance. And to me, if you said something insightful in class, that's like answering a good question in an exam. So that's how the grades will be. There is, I think I'm done with the slides.